How does such a heartwarming and happy picture mean that you, the player, let some of the most horrible things happen? Omori is an indie RPG game that, before I actually played it, I kept hearing compared chiefly to Earthbound. As if comparing an indie game you might not know about to another game you might not know about helps fill in any blanks. So let me just illustrate it this way. Oh, look at the cute and interesting art, the quirky, imaginative world you can explore and adventure in, the sweet and cheerful music playing. Oh. Well then, I guess we're gonna get some really dark stuff to go with this too. Omori is one of those cult classic, internet darling games that if you played it or experienced it, you'll not just see what the fuss was about, but also have it stick in your mind for various reasons. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of those reasons were deeply personal. This is kind of why it's a disservice to this or other games to try and get people's attention by comparing it to other games. It glosses over the creator's work, intentions, and themes they put forward. And this isn't a game using horror just for the hell of it, or effectively copying something else just because that worked for them. It's a game the creator, Omori, put their heart and soul into as a deeply personal project, which is reflected by the horror in it. So, come along with me as we board the Hypocrite bus and explore a game that feels like Sesame Street made a field trip to Silent Hill. Welcome to Omori. You could analyze it forever. Okay, so I know the big thing a lot of people like to focus on with this game is the story, characters, and events, things like that in it. All the spoilers, we'll get to them in a moment, but first, let's not ignore all the other things that this game has to offer us as we play through it. Out of anything else, you'll notice the artwork first. Omori actually started as an artwork blog by Omori, and was originally planned to be a graphic novel. The art is somewhat different from the original style, and the blog isn't around anymore, but if you want to see what it was like, I'll have an archive link in the description. Thank you, Omori Wiki. While there isn't much full-on animation to see, though it does have it, there seems to be a focus on making it all feel like notebook doodling come to life. The colorful and somewhat cheery art seems to permeate nearly everything in the game, except for Omori himself. Obviously, the game gets dark as hell, or that warning wouldn't be at the start, but a lot of the horror does have the art either changed to reflect the tone of the scenes, or have a more scrawled or deranged style of doodling to illustrate. Well, now's a good time, I guess, to get into the two main settings of the game. I'd call this a spoiler, but it doesn't take long for the game to make it clear there's a dream world and the real world. And if you saw my previous videos on Trolls Files x Omori, this bit was already spoiled. This duality of worlds is where I get some of my Silent Hill comparison. And the colorfulness of the art is where I bring up Sesame Street. And as you'll see, this game wants to use both of those presentations to help us learn important lessons and self-reflect. If you know Silent Hill, you'll realize that's an interesting link it has with Sesame Street. God, there's an idea for a crossover. Anyway, the dream world is known as Headspace, and the real world segments take place in Faraway Town. The gameplay in general is split between these areas with, in general, the same friend group you have in Headspace. For simplicity of explaining a lot of things in this game, I'm going to move on from that for now, since a lot of details, characters, and other spoilers would be described best in tandem with the story's progression and other things. Back to the gameplay, it works like a top-down RPG similar to older styles. Like I said, Earthbound is brought up as a comparison, but a more wide-reaching comparison would be the older Final Fantasy games, or most other NES or Super Nintendo RPG games. The game was developed in RPG Maker, so this old-school JRPG style is what it's sort of locked into being. That said, it's used to great effect. It follows traditional elements such as getting items and equipment, fighting monsters for experience to level up and get stronger, but there's a bit of an interesting twist to it. Instead of elemental magic, like most other games in this formula, earth, fire, wind, water, heart, Captain Copyrighted, that kind of thing, we instead have emotions. Some skills and items you use can cause your party or the enemies to become happy, sad, or angry. Happy characters act faster but aren't as accurate, while sad characters act slower but have higher defense. This defense is helped or hindered with losing less health at the cost of their juice, this game's version of skill points or magic points. Angry characters take more damage but also do more damage, and having any emotion can increase or decrease damage done to a target under a different emotion. It's detailed in a handy chart the game gives, but in summary, if you're happy and you know it, kick angry's ass. If you're angry and you know it, kick sad's ass. If you're sad and you know it, then your tears will surely show it. If you're sad and you know it, kick happy's ass. It's odd to say that at the start, I didn't give much thought to the emotion system. As you play through, though, not only does it get easier to understand and open a lot more interesting battles, but it also starts making a lot of sense in the context of the game's themes as well, including the fourth emotion, frightened, which gives no benefits and prevents the use of skills but not items. Continuing the subject of playing the game, Faraway Town still has battles, but there's no leveling or emotion system involved. It's a more basic, realistic take on things, and you will need healing items to keep you healed if you plan to actually win some of them. Of course, being the real world, you need to take on some jobs to make the bucks to buy the bandages for the boo-boos. The jobs are tutoring a couple kids, sorting inventory at a hardware store, swatting flies, yes, really, and finally delivering pizzas with some of the worst instructions you'll ever see. In the end, though, both parts of the game are about exploration and seeing what strange, quirky things you can do or get into. There's also discovering, exploring, and thinking about the themes, both big and small, that you'll come across, but we'll save those for the spoilers later. The themes are also aided a lot by the music. In general, the soundtrack fits a lot of the areas and scenes it's used in. It's hard for me to describe, but if you're in a forest, a castle, or underwater, be it in fights or walking around, the music sounds like you'd expect. I'm not trying to make it sound plain or generic, though some of the tracks got repetitive on me when I was grinding battles in some areas. It's a well-made soundtrack with some really memorable songs, especially when certain scenes come into play and the music actually becomes legitimately important and directly tied to the story. And with that, I suppose it's time to get into the story and everything that will lead us to. Before we get into it, I want to stress that I wasn't just blowing smoke when I brought up self-reflection. Omori is a game about characters you control and decisions you make. And therefore, if you have the time and ability to play it or experience it otherwise on your own, I highly recommend it, even after watching this video. It's a good game in terms of the simple yet deep gameplay that goes with it, as well as the story. However, you don't think your cup of tea is this kind of top-down, classic-style, turn-based RPG, it's up to you whether or not you want to grit your teeth playing a style you don't like to see the rest of it. And despite the content warning, Omori seems to explore such topics with more maturity than most other games do, and even has plenty of moments of humor and quirkiness in it to make sure that the whole thing isn't portrayed as only a dark, depressing slog. Now, I will point out that if you get it for yourself, the console version seems to have a few extra things in it that aren't on the PC version that I played. There is a giant pile of psychological or metaphorical themes and presentations to get into with this game moving forward. And overall, there are accepted conclusions about this game that people have reached. A lot of those do come from the creators' acknowledgments or words, but even then I think there's more that can be said or more thoughts that can be provoked from it. Art is an extension of the creator's thoughts and feelings, but it can also become more than that to other people. So while there are things that are either concretely confirmed or otherwise generally accepted about this game, that shouldn't preclude me or any of you from having your own conclusions and ideas about things in it. In some ways, it's a very personal experience for the players, just as much as it was for Omocat to make it. And that right there is probably why so many people enjoy the game and want others to know about it. That was a lot of lead-in, but it had to be said. So, now let's get into it. From here on in, there's going to be a lot of spoilers and probably uncomfortable topics, even beyond the scope of what the game presents. The game starts off with a scene of two boys consoling each other before cutting to Omori in white space. I'll discuss the characters, places, and other themes after some reveals later on. It's going to be simpler that way. After meeting your friends Kel, Aubrey, and Hiro, the four of you set out to a playground and meet two more friends, Mari and Basil, for a picnic. These picnics are a safe place, where you can heal by eating snacks, save the game, and generally hang out with your friends. After checking through Basil's photo album and visiting his flower garden, both important later, you spend time at Basil's house before something scares him and everything suddenly disappears. This is where the focal character of the game, Sunny, wakes up from his dream and gets a midnight snack, as well as a strange visitor. Going back to sleep, you return to playing as Omori and explore a space-themed land called Otherworld as they search for the now-missing Basil. I'll state that prior to playing this game fully, I did look up a bunch of stuff online, through various sites and things, to prepare myself for the videos I made about the Trolls Files X Omori crossover fan game. However, while that was useful to get some basic information for the fan game, which had some spoilers in it but still didn't spoil everything, in terms of talking about the game itself, I'm not using any cliff notes or anything like that, no wikis, because I want to be able to see it for myself, experience it myself, and come to my own conclusions without influence from other people's statements, opinions, and even other people's concrete facts. I bring this up now because Captain Spaceboy is one of the times that a lot of what else is said about him doesn't seem to fit the big picture too much when it comes to headspace, the themes, another character he's tied with in the game. However, as I'll get into later in the video, I do think that him and the other character do have a place. Now that the prologue is over, we enter the chapter 3 Days Left, which is where you begin to explore Faraway Town, and discover that for the first time in about 4 years, Sunny is going outside to meet his friends. Kel knocks on your door to hang out, since you only have 3 days left in town before moving away to the city. And through exploring your old hangout spots around town, you get filled in on how things have changed since Sunny, obviously by this point, has become a shut-in recluse, spending his time in escapist dreamworld fantasies. To give a quick summary, Kel seems to be the same, Hiro is out at college, Basil has become more shy and reserved than he was in Headspace, and the second biggest shocker is Aubrey has become a delinquent that's pushed away or even bullies her old friends. Wait, second biggest? Yeah, the big reveal is that, as hinted at with the nightmares, Mari, Sunny's older sister, died 4 years ago as well. And her death is the source of the friend group fracturing and Sunny wanting to hide inside not just his house, but his own fantasies of better times. Aubrey is actually still torn up over everything that happened, to the point of not just stealing Basil's photo album from him, but also going to church in what seems to come off as desperation for some kind of peace to it all. As a good church should, though, the pastor still accepts her and makes it clear she's the type the Lord's house should accept the most. Trying to get the photo album back, Sunny leads Kel into the church, which leads to a fight against Aubrey in the middle of service, complete with accusatory and shaming statements made by the rest of the congregation as the battle plays out. After this, Aubrey throws out the photo album and you recover it to find pictures of Mari missing, as well as differences between the pictures of what really happened compared to the ones seen in Headspace. The two decide to bring it back to Basil and reminisce with him. However, as the night goes on, Basil clearly begins freaking out and blatantly has issues with abandonment and being left alone, especially when it comes to Sunny. Also some hints as to what's going on, but we'll come back to that. After another night of facing Sunny's fears, Omori takes over in Headspace again and continues the search for the missing Basil. This time without a fear of spiders, they can explore another section of forest and come across Sweetheart's castle. Sweetheart is a pretentious, self-absorbed bit of an extreme narcissistic jerk. She's looking for her perfect love, and she's the girl that recently broke up with Captain Spaceboy. This quest is done during a live stage event, and after she sends all the losers to the dungeon, Hero winds up taking her fancy by accident. Trying to let her off easy, Hero and the rest wind up in the dungeon and begin their adventure of escaping and exploring what quirkiness lies within the grounds of the castle. Sweetheart winds up being the boss when they interrupt her wedding ceremony to herself. And by this point in the game, having a handle on the emotion system in battle starts to become important. Also, keep in mind how the game has been more or less correctly portraying this and what happens next as toxic and incorrect ways to deal with finding love in oneself and others. After her defeat, Captain Spaceboy returns, offers to marry her, and they happily depart after a rather funny moment with the censors and an explosive send-off for the stage. With nowhere else to go, Omori jumps down the hole and winds up in an abandoned library with the rest of the friends missing. It's here that important hints, clues, and lore is revealed. This library is actually home to Sunny's memories, and there are at least 2 of them that I'll cover. The names are blocked out, but it's easy to assume who's involved with what. First off, Sunny's phobias of heights, spiders, and drowning that you've come across stem from an event where Sunny almost drowned in a lake when a spider crawled onto his shoulder as he was about to jump in the water from a tall pillar he climbed onto in the faraway town park. Second is a memory where Sunny is showing disdain for some kind of practice he's scheduled for, since it takes time away from his friends. That second one is important to the analysis later on. After this segment, you can once more answer the door for Kel. However, I've been neglecting something earlier. There is another route you can take in the story, which has at least 3 different names depending on your source. But for now, I'll use the title Hikikomori route, which is a Japanese term for an extreme type of shut-in introvert like Sunny is. A very general definition, I know, but let's keep it simple for the moment. As the term hints at, you activate this path in the game by ignoring Kel and going back to bed. One of the main differences this has is preventing you from doing anything in faraway town, and spending time inside the house doing chores between the Headspace segments. This can be done the first or second time Kel comes around, but I wanted to bring it up now for a couple reasons. If you want to just get on this other story route, go ahead and do it the first time. However, if you want to be able to explore as much as you can with this other route, you might want to wait for the second time. This unlocks a few extra hidden areas, as well as gives an interesting hint towards something that might not have been clear in the normal route. Even though it has more bearing on what's going on in the normal route, and you see it in the other route. Look, this is something I should address now as a criticism of the game. It's one thing to have different lore and story events happen during a second playthrough. Omori, and this works thematically, which I'll describe later, locks you into one of two routes fairly early on in the game. And the problem I have with that is you don't see major changes in things for about 10 to 15 hours of gameplay, maybe more. In fact, if you take the Hikikomori route the first time you play the game, you won't get the full story of why everything is the way it is, and in some cases wonder what the big deal about the game is. Like I said before, though, thematically and story-wise, not getting the full story with this alternate route makes sense. Sunny didn't go out and discover anything, after all. So now that I've covered that little bit, I'll go along with what happens next in Faraway Town, which you wouldn't see on the Hikikomori route. Kel shares the news Hiro is visiting from college, and Sunny helps him gather some things for his return. However, they're interrupted with the news Basil has gone missing, and find him being bullied by Aubrey and her gang at the park's lake where they used to hang out. The same one Sunny fell into after getting scared by the spider. As stress and tempers start flaring again, Aubrey lashes out and knocks Basil into the lake. Sunny jumps in after him, but in the end struggles against his fear of drowning before someone is able to rescue them both. It turns out to be Hiro that heard the commotion as he was searching for Basil as well. But for Sunny, he saw someone else. Realizing Basil needs to get warmed up, the three of them leave Aubrey be for the moment and take Basil back home, where Hiro gets caught up on current events. Afterward, they decide that since it's their last chance to do so, Hiro and Kel spend the night at Sunny's house in a rather touching and feel-good scene, as it should be with friends. Now, it was at this point I had to reload a save and play through some stuff again, because there's something important about Hiro that's actually easy to miss. I knew from stuff like TV tropes and other sources that there is a scene where you visit Mari's grave to learn some important history of how Hiro handled Mari's death and what effect it had on Kel. During this scene, it's revealed that Hiro not only became a shut-in himself for about a year in response to Mari's death, whom he shared a love with, but also that when Kel tried to approach him and comfort him, Hiro responded by lashing out and yelling at him. Which would have been bad enough, but the commotion got their parents involved, and Mommy and Daddy went to Hiro's side while ignoring Kel. However, Hiro did break down in tears over it and apologized profusely to Kel about how he acted. And in Kel's words, it was a rough moment, but he got his old brother back after that. Real important info to have about the two of them, right? Well, unfortunately, I thought that since it was all involving Hiro, I had to wait until he came back. It turns out you can only see this if you visit the gravesite on the first day you're with Kel, and even then there might be specific timing, I'm not sure about that. So I had to reload a save point at the end of the prologue so that I could play through again and see it for myself, since it's very easy to not know it's there and miss out on it. It kind of sucks something that was important to the characters was missable. So, yeah, developers, some of us do have moments of stupidity brought on by expectations. To be fair, however, Omori is a game that encourages exploration to be able to piece things together yourself. And even when you see some things, you might not piece it together. Another night, though, means another dreamy visit to Headspace. But this time there's a dense fog everywhere and nobody's at the playground. Following a familiar face, you head deep underwater to discover everyone's now working at a resort casino after being tricked into signing contracts by Mr. Jawsome. And quite honestly, I think the time spent in this place was the most fun for me. It feels lively, there's some good jokes and funny moments, and Mr. Jawsome and Pluto Expanded are my favorite boss fights in the game. Also, during certain fights, Kel can actually get distracted and go play slots, making you win or lose money during the fight, so that was an interesting touch. The game is actually full of these moments. Things like fun, interesting, or at least odd characters, jokes, and funny moments, and little things scattered throughout the way battles, scenes, or other things are used. For instance, one of Aubrey's weapons is an upgraded pool noodle. When Omori isn't trying to be scary or foreboding, it's fun, colorful, and lighthearted. Yes, it's juxtaposed against, or even outright hiding, psychological or overt horror, but that doesn't mean that the fun can't be enjoyed separately. After things are resolved at the last resort, and Mr. Jawsome lets everyone go back to searching for Basil, you see that Sweetheart is up to something again. And for some reason, the gang decides it needs to be investigated because, well, she's a villain and must be doing something bad that they need to stop. I'm not being snarky, that's pretty much their reasoning for it. Tracking her down, you discover she's meeting sea witches that live inside of a whale named Humphrey. Humphrey himself is an interesting character, and the stage inside of him isn't that bad, just a little slow and at times confusing with the puzzles. You spy on the meeting Sweetheart has with the witches, who are revealed to be mad scientists of differing types named Molly, Medusa, and Marina, that are working on creating perfect suitors for Sweetheart. Sweetheart turns them all down and tries to bail without paying, which leads to passing the buck on to the kids in a boss fight against the 3 slime girls when they decide to capture them for further experiments. When it looks like they can get away, Humphrey suddenly becomes hungry and decides to eat everyone, leading to a series of fights against the insides of Humphrey until he finally coughs you back up. It's at this point the final sequences of the game start playing out. Shortly before getting to Humphrey, it became clear that the friends were actually starting to forget who Basil even was. And at one point, even the mission list Mari shows you stops offering Find Basil as an objective. This is also why the friends are a bit flippant about going after Sweetheart. They had lost their memories and therefore lost sight of finding Basil again. Traveling through a hallway decorated in grasping arms, a voice begins revealing what all of this is connected to. A repeating cycle in headspace involving a truth that Omori is trying to keep hidden, and that Basil will always find, and that Mari will always guide Sunny to even when he's inside of Omori. The voice makes it clear that the creations in headspace evolve on their own, which I'll come back to, but even then there's hints that at least Mari's actual spirit is in headspace, and not just Sunny's memories and construct of her. The constant reference of white egret flowers being a symbol of thoughts following into your dreams may even go further than Mari, and suggest at least Basil's actual thoughts or spirit are projecting into headspace while they dream as well. Maybe even all of the friends in some cases. It's here the reason for the keys you've been finding is made clear, and not just for a game of Hangman. Sort of. Nearly each time you get a correct one, you can check the hole left behind for creepy moments or scenes. Here at the end, with all the correct keys, you can unlock the truth. You revisit Basil's house to find a giant rotten hole in the floor, and the entrance to Black Space. Black Space is where the 2 major spoilers for the game are revealed, since it's kind of the climax of both paths in the game, though not the ending for either. It's also where a lot of the horror isn't so much in jump scares and quick flashes like most of the previous times, but in exploration and seeing nightmarish, uncomfortably odd, or even just trippy imagery. If Headspace is Sunny's constructed dream world that he is able to more or less lucidly take part in actively, Black Space is kind of dreams where our subconscious just dumps everything we didn't even know we had in our minds onto us. The kind of dreams where you run in an endless forest, get nowhere, and then wake up with no memory except an overbearing feeling that at some point you were confused or afraid of something, but can't explain any of it. Which, since I brought it up, let's go over the spoilers and actually discuss what those eyeball things all over the place actually are, as well as other things. Coming up are two major spoilers to the game. The second one sort of being discussed before the game itself fully gets into it. First, Omori is actually antagonistic. Remember how I mentioned the Headspace characters have their own agency? Well, Omori is sort of the computer program that runs amok, but only because of strict adherence to the program. I spent a long time trying to figure out how to simplify this explanation, so here goes. Omori is Sunny, but still distinct and able to do his own thing when Sunny isn't exerting influence. Omori wants to protect Sunny from terrible memories, and Sunny wants to be protected from those memories. Which is how Black Space is also used as a sort of dumping ground for things that Omori wants to generally hide or get rid of. Your decision on which path of the game to take influences whether Sunny continues hiding inside of Omori and letting Omori's influence over him grow, or become more mature and try to pull away from Omori's growing influence. Which is why the two paths are also known as the Sunny route for the normal, seemingly intended playthrough, and the Omori route for the Hikikomori path. And it's at the end of Black Space that these two paths finally diverge from each other. On either path, you eventually start finding Basil trapped in Black Space, but he keeps dying as you try to rescue him. Finally, you come across a church, where one of two things happens. If you're on the Omori route, then Stranger will make an apparent last-ditch effort to force Sunny to deal with the truth, seemingly by trying to destroy Omori himself, only to have Omori rescue Sunny and Basil both, at the cost of completely taking over Sunny's psyche, and the player never learning the full truth. This is pretty much the end of the Omori route in terms of clear story, but there are some details and lore left in there to explore and figure out. We'll get back to those, though. For now, we'll go through the rest of the Sunny route, which does give us the full story on what happened in both past and present. On the Sunny route, Omori actually kills Headspace Basil without Sunny getting involved, seemingly reaching a point where Omori is able to be much more separated from Sunny than before. This may be since he's connecting with his friends in the real world again, as well as getting closer to the truth. Sunny is relying on him less and less as the Sunny route goes on. Omori killing Basil is given more context by the Omori route as well, effectively suggesting Omori is killing the true memories of Basil, while only looking to rescue his idealized, constructed version of Basil. So yeah, in either story path, it's at this point you realize Omori is not a hero in this game. Sunny wakes up after this, and seemingly gets to talk to Mari's spirit in a heartfelt scene. As mentioned, this is probably because Omori has given up trying to stop this kind of thing from happening to Sunny, or is otherwise unable to. The game also mentions, or hints at, that all the times Omori's been trying to bury things in Black Space has led to it growing and making it harder to keep it from breaking out into Headspace more often. To the point that in this cycle, the entrance to Black Space is in the heart of Headspace, suggesting that this is the breaking point of either Omori trying to force it down, or Sunny finally facing what he's been trying to hide from. And to explain what Omori has been trying to keep Sunny from dealing with, as well as how the two paths end, here's big spoiler number 2. Between the imagery in Headspace and Black Space, as well as discussions in Faraway Town, we're hinted that Mari died because she hung herself for some reason. The truth is actually much worse and traumatic. As I mentioned in the library, one of Sunny's memories is that he can't spend time with his friends because he has practice that day. Sunny used to listen to Mari play piano and even used to play a violin, seemingly mostly as a way to be closer to his dear sister. He got a new violin for Christmas after his friends pooled money from odd jobs together, and that was what he had practice for on the days he used to spend with his friends. As the library memory hints at, Sonny was getting frustrated at the fact that what was at first an interest and something he seemingly wanted to approach as a hobby became something that required more time taken from other things he liked. He kept having to practice with Mari for an upcoming recital they were going to do together, and on what seems to be the morning of the recital, Sonny's violin got broken. Now online I kept seeing people saying that Sonny broke the violin himself out of growing frustration over all the practicing and stuff. And while I believe that, and I can see it as plausible, I don't remember seeing anything in the game itself that actually confirmed that. However, I'm not going to discount that I may have missed the clear detail, so to speak, since, I missed the whole Kel at the Mari's grave thing. Regardless, the violin is broken, and that led to Mari confronting and arguing with Sonny over it. And I'm sure part of it had to do with her and his friends putting up the money for it. His frustrations and emotions boiling over, Sonny decided to just shove her away from him, and accidentally sent her tumbling down the stairs, breaking her neck. Oh, it gets worse. We're not done yet. Basil was there and saw the whole thing. Guess he just walked in the front door or something as it was going on. What happens next is hinted at in the game, through the photos and some things he says, that Basil is the one that came up with an idea to use a jump rope to string up Mari to make it look like a suicide and keep Sonny out of trouble. And as they glanced back at the body, they saw an open eye under her hair, leading to the creation of the something haunting Sonny and Basil are dealing with. The phobia monsters weren't the only source of the somethings. Most of them, and the hellish apparitions Sonny keeps seeing, come from his fear and guilt over Mari's death and the cover-up. That's possibly why a number of the something creatures in Headspace say the following. Now right now, all this is revealed in the Sonny route. I'll come back to how things go in the Omori route in a moment. However, this is revealed in the Sonny route because Mari's actual spirit seems to be getting into Headspace and trying to lead him to confronting the truth. Not out of malice or guilt, but seemingly out of love and forgiveness for her brother and wanting him to come to terms with it all. During a moment in his home, Sonny actually seems to talk to her spirit, as she apologizes about her pushing Sonny too much with all the violin practicing. So in some ways, the somethings may be tied to Mari's spirit reaching out. And each time Sonny, or more likely Omori, mentally censors her as either somethings or the scary images to keep Sonny from remembering what he did. Hell, Omori could be ratcheting up how frightening the somethings are and making sure Sonny keeps seeing them on purpose to drive him away from paths leading to Mari or the truth. This may also explain why the stranger character in Headspace seems to channel Basil. Mari represents Sonny's personal parts of the truth, while the stranger resembling Basil may represent other parts of the truth and maybe more. Stranger may be, deliberately or subconsciously, Sonny knowing that he has to reach out to his friends and reconnect with them, including Basil, to be able to help everyone come to terms with everything that's occurred. And with the constant symbolism of the white egret flower in the game, it's also possible that Basil and the rest of the friends are somehow having their thoughts or psyches reach out to Sonny in his dreams. I know some of what I've said isn't exactly agreed upon, but I do think there is room for the supernatural to be in this game to help explain things just as much as there is for mental stuff. Another source of the somethings and strangers I've seen people generally agree upon, however, gives us a good reason to detour to the Omori route again to help fill in some more lore and explore a few theories on just how deep this game can get. And while it might seem this is just a bunch of little things, I think it's the little things like this that help a game stay in the mind of those that play it and keep their thoughts going. As well as, for the most part, show that attention to detail was given instead of just making story bits for the game and then fill in the rest with a bunch of time wasting. Or, to put it more bluntly, respect was made in making the game so that the player could have more reason to respect the game for what it was trying to achieve, especially the messages. I'll be talking about it not because it's there, but because it's there and it works. So here's the thing. At this point in the Omori route, after saving Basil, Omori completely subsumes and possesses Sunny, to the point of being in the mirror in the real world. While this still cuts off any faraway town segments, it opens up a sort of reset version of Headspace where everything can be freely explored. This means what I'm going to get into can be discovered in any order, but I'll describe it in the order I did it. The Omori route adds new places to explore, new challenging fights, and new lore and context for many things involving the game, but at the cost of ending Sunny's story without resolution and terrible consequences. First and foremost, when the time comes to get back to Headspace and explore some more, we find Basil is now relegated to staying with Mari on the picnic baskets where they're always safe and unable to rediscover any bad memories or truths. This is something the voice mentions in the hallway after Humphrey, but more importantly, between the voice and our experiences after the resetting of Headspace, we're going to have plenty of information that Omori is becoming more active and repressing memories. And now that he's in control fully, he'll be repressing them violently. Going to re-explore the Deeper Well area, you can discover sheet music, which allows you to use them on a piano hidden in the Lost Library section. This opens optional boss fights against the Phobia somethings, which previously you couldn't damage, but can now defeat. Omori will learn a new ability each time, but when all three are defeated, the piano fades away, and the memories kept in the library are lost as well. Omori is now working to absolutely destroy Sunny's memories. Most likely because Omori sees it as the best solution to keeping him from ever finding the truth again. And in order to do that, the next step is going to take us to the Abyss. The shadiest hitchhiker in the world takes you there, however you won't be able to explore it without the rest of the keys scattered around the world. This includes a rather hidden location called the Lost Forest, where someone named Daddy Longlegs gives more cryptic statements about Headspace and Sunny's past actions in it. This includes the fact it was used, either by creation or control, to physically sit above Blackspace and seal it away. However, the Abyss is where all this information and lore about Blackspace and Headspace comes to a head with the character and boss fight, Abby. Finding and talking to the branch coral has it say before Headspace existed as it does now, there were 3 great creatures. These were the oldest, the favorite, and the wisest. Humphrey is the oldest, but over time has lost control and reason with himself, most likely not even realize what he is anymore, which explains how things go on his level. The favorite is the big yellow cat, which really doesn't have much else besides that. However, both of these characters are linked to Sunny's childhood, Humphrey from a children's book, and the cat from a playground object. Now, to say it here, I feel like that makes these 3 great creatures the earliest imaginary friends Sunny had. They existed before Headspace was created, and by extension existed before Omori was created. That leads to my hypothesis about what Abby is. She's the wisest, but I can't find any concrete evidence of what she's based off of. However, to quote the game, she committed an act that opposed the dreamer's will, a phrase constantly used to describe Sunny or Omori, most likely both at the same time while in the same body. For that, she was banished to the Abyss, and as the game tells us, the Abyss is an area so far below Headspace, it's the closest to Blackspace. As such, the corrupting influence of all those negative or otherwise cast-off feelings and memories seep into Headspace much easier down there. This corruption is where some of the something creatures come from, presumably the memories of Mari corrupting and assimilating Headspace denizens into the somethings. This corruption has affected Abby as well. However, despite losing a lot of her memories, she is still presumably the wisest, as she was before. Which means Omori isn't going into the abyss just to explore random and creepy stuff like you can with the extra black space locations this route opens. I think Omori is going down there to kill her off. And it's easy to assume Omori's motivation is, with her wisdom, she can still share things about the truth and is therefore a threat for that reason. But let's take the idea Dreamer applies to Sunny and Omori effectively at the same time. After she's defeated, and by the way, nearly all these Omori route bosses are very tough, even if you know what you're doing, she calls the Dreamer her best friend. If she was one of the first, before the current version of Headspace, and therefore the Headspace friend groups were created, maybe the betrayal wasn't much of a betrayal. At the time, she was Sunny's best imaginary friend. But Omori just made new friends, and he can't have that. So Omori shoved her as far deep as he could and left her to rot, where not only she couldn't share her wisdom, but she couldn't interfere with the world he was creating with the new friends. That said, choosing to spare her unlocks the best weapons and equipment for the friends in Headspace, which help a great deal with the rest of the optional boss fights. And in collecting those items, you discover Abby has had her tentacles reaching everywhere in Headspace, possibly trying to still witness everything and maybe even find a way to reach out to Sunny again. At this point, though, the Omori route is entirely focused on continuing things on Headspace, and even revisiting Black Space to explore new areas and fight new challenges. So I'll wrap up the analysis of it with one more thing before returning to the real world. It might not be easy to notice, but after the reset of Headspace, some of the fights and optional bosses become stronger and tougher. Now, I'm not sure if it was intentional for the reasons I'll get into, but it was still intentionally programmed that way. As an additional challenge and to help get more experience and money, yeah. But there's also the possibility that Headspace may be pushing back harder against Omori. After all, everything so far has been in cycles. And if you look hard enough, you will find the remains of the friends that died. Of course, Omori wouldn't let his friends die, that's why it's toast or not alive when they're defeated or you find a skeleton, like he's a YouTube censor. But as the voice mentions, the trauma of those deaths that didn't happen still exist, presumably as the skeletons. Which means Omori may be seeking out these bosses and challenges to put them down, so his Headspace friends can be safer. And nothing is going to go down without a fight now. So, speaking of his friends, how are things going on in the real world? Well, on the Sunny route, after Sunny wakes up, breakfast is interrupted by Kim, one of the local hooligans and newer best friend of Aubrey since she joined their group. It turns out Aubrey isn't coming out of her house, and in desperation, Kim is asking Sunny and the others to see if they can do something. Hiro urges the rest of them to check in on it, and after seeing the rest of the hooligans hanging around her house, the group finds the door unlocked and heads in. It's here we find out not only have they never been to Aubrey's house before, their friendship might have been one of the few good things in her life. No father and an apathetic mother, she's had to keep care of herself and her pet rabbit pretty much alone. There's no dialogue for this, but it's clearly shown. With Hiro there, he's able to actually get both her and Kel to open up and mediate their problems. Afterward, when Kel reveals they rescued the photo album from the trash, the group decides to return the photos Aubrey kept of Mari to their home in the album together. I'd say the following scene where they finally make up and get back together as friends is a touching scene, but in the end, this entire day in faraway town where you get to explore and hang out with everyone together again leads to a lot of touching moments. It's kind of like Black Space. Exploring and seeing it yourself, one way or the other, is better than hearing about it or reading about it. There's even a dungeon you can tackle in Faraway Town to let the group have an adventure together, though that turns out to have been a daydream Sunny was having, meaning his thoughts are turning to his real friends more than they are to himself. However, one last friend needs to be taken care of, Basil. And this is where everything starts coming to a head. When you go to his house, you find he's locked himself in his room after coming back from visiting his grandmother at the hospital. Presumably, she's passed on, and since his parents are always away for work, his only adult around the house is their caretaker, Polly. When they get no response from knocking at his door and try to talk to him through it, the group decides they'll spend the night and make sure they're there for him when he's ready. It's during this night that not only we see Sunny acting independent of Omori in white space, but also a sort of boss rush against all of the something phobias, ending with Sunny learning to overcome them and starting the sequence of events where you collect Polaroids that show what the truth is behind Mari's death and the cover-up. And this was a very creepy segment of the game, especially if you take the time to explore around it. After this takes place, Sunny wakes up in the middle of the night. Now I'm going to do something a little odd, but I felt it made a lot of sense. After I stopped trying to play the game blind, I used a walkthrough. Specifically, one made by Zentipedes on the Steam community section under Guides. A link in the description. It's really great and helped a lot, as well as avoid spoilers. Not that there's much left after you watch this video, but there's things I've left out for you to still see for yourself. That said, when it comes to this point in the guide, they bring up that you as the player should approach the situation as you feel you should. And that's something that really helps add strength to Omori as a game. Everyone in it has been approaching their guilt and their grief differently. Enough so that nearly any of them can be seen as a reflection of how we might react ourselves. Hiro shut himself away for a year. Basil became a lonely, neurotic mess that only got worse after Sunny shut himself away and left school, and with everyone drifting away, Aubrey felt she had nobody she could turn to. And when she approached Basil so she could at least see pictures of them all once more, she found the photos defaced with marker and blamed him for it. This began her bullying of him, as she felt it was just punishment for what he seemingly did. And because she was part of the hooligans now, they decided it was okay to bully him too. Thing is, it wasn't Basil that did it, even though Aubrey's the one that cleaned them all back up. After getting the 5th correct key, you can jump down a hole that depicts a scene of Sunny surrounded by the defaced pictures. This presumably happened after a point in time. An earlier cutscene shows us Basil and Sunny having one last look at the photo album that ends with marker covering up the photos. If you ignore Kel the second time he comes to the door, then this is actually repeated. Remember that after the first day you were out with Kel, you got to keep the photo album. And at a certain point in time, during this version of the Omori route specifically, which is why I don't have video of it, you can check the photo album again and see that everything's been defaced again, at a time when Sunny was the only one that had them. Also, because I brought it up, going on to the Omori route this way with ignoring Kel the second day actually opens up some new things to see in black space, unless in some cases you're going down the Sunny route and taking some very specific and secret paths. Back to the point, Omori was a very personal game for Omocat to make, but by leaving things open to interpretation to the point I can have different conclusions than you or others have, it becomes a game personal to those that experience it themselves. You see something of yourself in the emotions the characters are having, including characters that aren't the main ones. Sunny's father is suggested to have reacted to Mari's death with anger and left the family over it, while Sunny's mother became protective of Sunny while hints are given that she's hiding her pain from him. It's actually possible both his parents were able to suspect Sunny had something to do with what happened, if the vision of his father saying, "You're no son of mine," is a memory and not a fabrication. Which gives a different context behind her statement of, "You are my only son, I can't lose you as well." Omori himself seems to still care about Sunny's mother, since while doing the chores, specifically sorting the stuff after he's taken over Sunny, he still has her approval in mind when it's done. And even outside their reactions to Mari's death, is there anything the other characters have going on in their lives or minds that we felt similar to or empathize with? The father worried about his son's happiness. The newlyweds eager to make friends in town. The hardware store guy that's grumpy about people not putting things back where they belong. A guy constantly failing at fixing a leaky pipe and venting frustration over it. A group of friends feeling it's okay to gang up on bullying someone because he deserves it. This isn't the last time I'll bring up the townspeople, but I think the point is made. And this is probably one of the most important things about Omori as a game, and I wonder if this is what makes some people like it as well. It's a game that gives us a generally safe way to witness and think about guilt, grief, depression, worse things, and the consequences of them without, hopefully, having them personally occur with us. But it also does the same thing for other topics that we think wouldn't normally be an interesting or compelling thing to put in a game or any narrative. Which brings me back to the decisions you think should be made at this juncture, and why I think Centipedes had an excellent point in their guide about how this is something that you shouldn't read ahead about, but think about how you're going to do it. So after saving the game at such an important moment, here's how things go. If you don't bother checking on anything, or if you say no to a certain option and walk away, you can go back to sleep. This leads to what I keep seeing called one of the neutral endings, but let's be honest, they're all really, really horrible except for the two main endings. You wake up again, finding all your friends despondent and freaking out near Basil's room. Inside, you find he's killed himself as a something representing his own guilt, or perhaps Sonny's guilt over letting this happen and having him involved in the first place, surrounds him. Closing the door, Sonny suppresses the memory like he did with Mari's death, to the point he hides the door from himself like he did with the closet at his home. We'll come back to the closet thing, but for now, Hiro suggests that Sonny should just go home and move on with his new life. After all, everything will be okay, right? Sonny goes back to sleep, with a new shape appearing in his room, and becomes Omori once more in white space. However, there's nowhere to go and nothing to do. Presumably because Basil is integral to headspace, so not going back there now. So he stabs himself awake. Going outside to meet his mom and move to his new life in the city, it's clear that something is going to be following him from his old life, as sirens blare during the credits. So let's avoid that and actually say yes to the question. Do you want to save Basil? He's in the middle of a psychotic break, and seeing his good friend Sonny once more, he's able to let out all the thoughts and feelings he's been fighting with these past 4 years. The good news is that you stopped his suicide and he isn't going to hurt himself now. The bad news is he attacks Sonny during his freakout, and Sonny is forced to fight back. It's an exceptionally horrifying fight, not just in presentation, but just the idea that because of all the failures the friends had toward each other, these two kids are now fighting for their lives against each other. It's repeatedly pointed out that Sonny wants to run, but the game won't let you. Basil is attacking you, thinking he's getting rid of the something that's trying to take Sonny away again, and leave him alone. And the status bar begins to repeat the phrase, "Everything is going to be okay." The fight only ends, and not mercifully, when Basil gouges Sonny's eye with a set of garden shears he was going to use on himself before the two of them pass out from their wounds. The following segment has the player revisiting faraway town and coming home to find words of heartfelt encouragement from Basil and Mari once more. Again, I'm thinking stuff like this shows that somehow the actual Basil's thoughts and feelings and Mari's spirit are getting into Sonny's dreams. That said, the first thing done is finally going into the closet Sonny kept hiding from himself, and finding the broken violin, with Mari's hair still entangled in it. After very bittersweet visits to Sonny's memories of his time with the friend group, the violin he is carrying with him slowly starts to repair itself. After talking to his friends, both past and present, he takes the stage and finally plays his music for them, and breaks down in tears. Once more in white space, Sunny finally has his final boss battle in the game, against Omori. It's really easy to screw up this fight. Even so, you have to keep going until Omori simply has enough and hits you as hard as he can, telling Sunny he should just die. It's that mentality that explains two endings I didn't cover, both of which involve Sunny stabbing himself in the real world. One is done in the Omori route after Omori completely takes over Sunny, and you can find the option to stab yourself in the house. The other is if, after you go back to Sunny's house after Basil kills himself, you can go to Sunny's kitchen to get a knife before going to bed, which leads to Omori stabbing more than just himself in white space. Both have the same end result, and I haven't shown them because they do legitimately unsettle me a bit, which is most likely the point. However, the two main endings revolve around this final fight with Omori. If you've gotten far enough, you're asked if you want to continue instead of retry. Choosing no gives you the bad ending of the game, and it's a doozy. Simply explained, Sunny gives up and Omori takes complete control like in the Omori route. However, this time instead of going into headspace, you find Sunny on a balcony, with the only option being to jump. Under other circumstances, I would have wondered if the background changing meant that Omori felt this was a normal thing to do to get out of the real world and back into headspace. But let's be honest, Omori damn well knows what he's doing here. The truth is out, Sunny knows everything, it's all gone too far from being fixable. So Omori is just hitting delete on everything. That would be bad enough an ending, especially taking into account how literally everyone would react to it. But there's one thing I noticed when I played this section again to get footage for the video. Check the sketchbook before leaving whitespace and you'll notice a blank page in it. That page used to have something drawn on it. So let me make this clear. That blank page speaks volumes about the ending, making me think that instead of calling it the bad ending, it should have been called the "you unimaginable bastard" ending. The something was gone. Sunny had clearly and unequivocally reached a point where he had overcome his guilt and felt he could actually deal with it in a proper, healthy way and go back to his friends to work things out. Sunny was finally free after so much hard work to get over his doubts and fears. And then right at the end, he gave up because of your decision. You bastard. And yet, me too, which is kind of what compelled me to go back into the game and make sure I played the good ending again, just to make sure that's what I left off Sunny with. And you might as well just take that as me confessing that, yes, I did care about what the characters are going through in this game. So, speaking of, let's actually have the good ending take precedence. Choosing to continue, Sunny instead rises with his violin, and plays the recital with Mari that he never got the chance to. In a beautiful sequence, with some of the most beautiful music I've heard anywhere, we get to see the memories of Sunny's life with Mari, including her tearfully saving him from drowning. With the duet finished, Omori finally surrenders to Sunny and fades away, most likely as acceptance that he isn't needed anymore. Sunny wakes up in the hospital afterward, and lets 4 years of emotion break free in tears. He gets out of bed with a bandaged eye and surrounded by flowers, depending on how many side quests you did in Faraway Town. I'll bring those up in the conclusion shortly because they do have significance beyond achievements. Wandering the halls, Sunny sees two things: his headspace friends and the stranger. Trying to follow the friends actually has Sunny refuse to go along with them, making the only path to take the one leading to Basil's room. As he enters, he sees his friends all waiting. Seemingly, as good friends should, they were the ones to get them to the hospital after finding them blacked out and wounded from a fight that most likely made enough noise to wake them. And this leads to one final sentence that the fandom for this game has theorized about since it was first seen. A lot of the discussion about Omori is on two things, and both of them are so prevalent that I'm not even sure the endings or deeper meanings and lore are that much of a spoiler anymore. Like how everybody knows about Darth Vader by now, so the only thing impressive about the twist ending of Empire Strikes Back for newcomers might be how the presentation of the scene still holds up, even with knowing the full story ahead of time. So it's time now for me to throw my hat into the overstuffed pile and tackle the question. Since the game doesn't show it, how would Sonny's friends react to him telling the truth of Mari's death? Let's go with the simplest but harshest idea I've seen, which is they'll be upset about it and the friend group breaks apart again, or at least ends their relationship with Sonny and Basil, and Kel, Hiro, and Aubrey are left to heal amongst themselves. I absolutely don't believe that's the case. However, keep that idea in mind, and understand I'm not saying it's a wrong theory. I just don't believe in it based on how I see things. To start with, there's just about everything that the mental versions of Sonny's friends have said to him in the later visions, especially if we take it as their spirits or thoughts reaching out to him somehow. When everyone's finally back together as friends, they keep making statements that solidify they've learned from what happened with straying apart from another. And as friends, they'll stick together again to not repeat those mistakes. And in a way, I wouldn't doubt they had similar thoughts and discussions when they discovered the scene of Sonny and Basil's fight. Basil seems to have stayed quiet about the truth in the hospital, but that doesn't stop the possibility of anything else they could have discussed, including the fact that the reason the fight was going on to begin with was Basil's fear of being left alone, which is partly why they may have been staying so close to him even when Sonny was healing too. So simplest explanation, the friends would forgive, or at least understand and have closure with Sonny's revelation, is all the times the game keeps bringing up that they sort of promise they will. And honestly, if it was meant for them to break up after discovering the truth, that would be a pretty cynical and dark way to reward the player's efforts in the game. Hell, a friend of mine I discussed the game with summed up that idea and what happens in the game with this quote. So his sister and their friend dies, and instead of all the friends getting together to help each other out and comfort each other and move on together, they all break up and go their separate ways. They sound like selfish assholes. If the game wants us to take the lesson as, why bother, then why does it keep throwing all that other stuff at us like it's important? In my view, if that's how you think it'll all turn out, then it invalidates a whole lot of the game and the stuff you went through in it, and just turns it into vapid edginess. But what other evidence do I have? Well, let's remember what I said about each of them having their own ways of dealing with the grief. Not just to the player, but doesn't it seem parts of their individual actions mirror something about how Sonny approached it? Hiro locked himself away. Kel still wanted his old friends to be around. Basil became withdrawn over, I suppose, the fear of having to talk about what happened. Aubrey might be the one that solidifies their forgiveness. If there's anyone that understands going out of your mind with fear and guilt over even just nearly killing someone by accident, it would be Aubrey. Basil can't swim, and Sonny at the time was so fearful of drowning he freaked out and lost track of how to swim and what to do. Hiro had to save them both, and the entire time Aubrey was absolutely beside herself with what she had just done. In the ending outside Basil's room, she even blames herself for bullying Basil to the point of his death. Also, note about that scene that in their shock they aren't arguing or otherwise going after each other. So their shock about the truth would probably be similar and not immediately turn to rejections and fighting. And before the truth and Basil clearing up what the fight was about, Aubrey probably blamed herself for Sunny and Basil nearly killing each other. Forgiveness might not be instantaneous or even fully given, but the friends would definitely understand Sunny's and Basil's situations and their reactions to it. I think that either as a stronger or weaker bond, for whatever reason, I mean, Sunny is still moving away, the friendship between them will still remain. And as one final point to this, the good ending shows us a scene with the tree stump. Previously, there was only a pinwheel left on it by Aubrey. This time, a cactus, flowers, and book are left as well. All of those could have come from Basil, the book most likely being the photo album, or the group could have placed them all there. However, it is interesting that the hooligans leave what might be the same potted cactus plant in the hospital. Perhaps Aubrey brought them along with the group as well. So yes, either as close friends or just acquaintances, I think the group still keeps in touch and stays together as the only ones who can really connect and understand each other over what their lives are like. This doesn't mean there has to be forgiveness, total or partial, for them to remain close. However, the closure and understanding is what's important. Now, if you've taken the time each day you arrive in Headspace to visit Basil's garden and water his drying out flowers, including checking on them after last resort but before Humphrey, this unlocks a hidden ending. When Basil sees Sunny, they both have their something around them. But when Sunny gives a reassuring smile to Basil, which he returns, both somethings fade away. Easy to analyze. Their fear and guilt about the truth is gone, and the both of them are not just ready to share it with the others, but also realize they have each other's support moving forward no matter the outcome. This makes watering the flowers symbolic, since you're showing that even in an imaginary world, Basil can rely on Sunny. This is probably the most important lesson the game gives us, and why the ending was so ambiguous to begin with. It doesn't matter what happens in the end after Sunny has the closure and courage to come clean with everybody. The only proper and healthy way to handle these mental issues that were destroying him inside, as well as prevent them from even getting out of hand in the first place, is to accept the mistakes happened. And the best thing to do in order to move forward and have closure is to be honest with yourself and others over what happened. Yes, things might go bad by fessing up, but it's the best way to handle it. This is why there's a sad irony in that Omori had to recreate Sunny's friends in Headspace, when at any time, Sunny could have seen them by simply opening a door. And while this is a very mature game for all that, it gives a lesson nearly any age should learn from and think about. But there's one more thing the game teaches us that I don't think many people, if any, have gotten into discussions about. In the hospital, your side quest completion in Faraway Town is rewarded with flowers and get well notes. It's also these messages that make me scratch my head about the amount of time he was in the hospital, since they reference things like over the summer after Sunny helped out. So I did some quick searching and found out that getting stabbed in the eye can put you in the hospital for up to 2 weeks, depending on how much surgery is needed. Sure, maybe it's just a couple days, especially since Basil seems to have just had bruises, but the point is plenty of time has passed for word to get around about what happened to Sunny and Basil. Why is that important? Because in Headspace, Sunny wanted to be liked and be happy. So Omori made things that way. He went on adventures, fighting bad guys, being a big hero, or at least someone looked up to. This even extends to his name. Omori appears etched on the grand pianos that you see in the game, including in the church. This suggests it's a brand name for the pianos, and since Mari was so focused on her piano practice and recitals, it's not unbelievable that Sunny would name his perfectly liked self Omori due to childish thinking that Mari cared more about the piano than him. However, that's where the other theme of this game comes in, with this roomful of flowers section of the ending. In Faraway Town, Sunny became beloved and respected, a kind of hero to everyone, just by being a friendly, respectful, and helpful person. Supporting a frustrated man's attempts to fix a leaky pipe. Playing hide and seek with bored twins. Giving advice and support to artists. Helping with shopping. Even things that don't end up giving the flowers as rewards at the end still have emotional impact to the characters. Helping out gives you more insight into the townspeople and generally makes things better for them, no matter if they give flowers or not. Did you have to fight through a castle and defeat an evil princess? Did you have to fight a trio of mad scientists in the belly of a whale? No, you just had to be a good person. And that's the extra theme that can be found in the game. We don't have to do big things to make big impacts. Something as simple as holding open a door can make the difference in someone's day or even their life. People have enough problems in the world. Simple gestures that show we're not trying to add to them can mean a lot. Part of what makes this game good is that instead of just going, "Oh, suicide and dark themes, edgy and fun, right?" it actually focuses on the consequences and aftermath of not just dark themes, but also positive ones. And when you have little things that work together and fit it just as well as the big things, it helps solidify the themes, metaphors, and overall artistic presentation. And you want to look for those little things in a game like Omori because it gives you the feeling that there are things to find when you go searching. Think back to Sweetheart and Captain Spaceboy, and how nearly everything about them revolved around love and relationships. And yes, I couldn't think of a more effective place to discuss this, so it's toward the end here. Anyway, the kiss they share is censored. Funny joke, right? Well, let's also consider this is a world put together by Omori to deal with and suppress emotions. Hiro and Mari were seemingly, if not clearly, in love with each other to the point of flirting a couple times. Plenty of moments, including a hidden section in black space, show that there might have even been a budding romance between Sunny and Aubrey. Sunny at least has a crush on her, and those feelings might still be around in the present day if some of Aubrey's conversations are taken that way. But if Omori is trying to suppress emotions, or at least emotions that would lead Sunny to the truth, then maybe Sweetheart and Spaceboy are more than just recurring characters with repetitive stories. If Sunny still wants to pursue his crush with Aubrey, and it is still around with Headspace Aubrey and Omori, he might leave the house and eventually have to deal with the truth. So in order to dissuade that, not only does Omori censor the affection of a kiss, but also make sure that the two characters in Headspace most focused on love and relationships always have bad experiences or endings with their quests. Like I said, Omori is a game that lets you explore and think on theories such as that, and there's plenty left vague about things that let everyone come to their own conclusions. Maybe one's based on their personal views or experiences. There's a lot of notes and other things that I've taken about what to talk about, what I've seen, what to include in the video about this game. And plenty of others have also covered a lot of obvious and not so obvious things about it. That said, I feel like this game especially is one that, if you let it, will give you plenty of moments to think and have personal introspection about yourself, just as much as it was a very personal project for OmoCat to make it. What kind of things do you project onto the characters and world, or what does it make you think about in your own lives? Don't feel compelled to answer that, it's something for your personal thoughts. But that openness of the game led to a lot of fan theories and even fan stories, and even I was left wondering things about the game. To conclude, here's one last thought experiment I want to give to show the full strength of Omori as a game. Omori is a game of a lot of things, big and small, coming together. So, what would it be like if certain chunks of it simply weren't there? We saw that if you do the Omori route early, there's no faraway town part of the game, making it focus more on the psychological aspects of the game in terms of the lore, horror, and Omori's character. What would the game be like if it focused entirely on faraway town with little or no headspace? Would that make the focus more on what I discussed with being a hero in the real world just by being respectful and good? And what could be added? Faraway Town could have been expanded with a new kid moving into Sunny's old house, maybe making friends with the others. Through that dynamic, we could have a kind of playable epilogue, seeing what kind of character development the friends, especially Basil, went through while the new kid was ignorant to what actually happened so that their forgiveness of Sunny is still kept vague. Explore the town and see what else has changed because of the player's actions. And what if you like playing the headspace stuff and wanted even more fights and exploration? Well, a recurring character named Snaily describes that he wants to train and become as strong as Omori's group. Maybe we can play as him, with entirely different skills and even different allies, as he explores headspace, free of Omori's influence and resetting, while the player gets to have more challenges. This game had so much to it that I was able to imagine such things easily and almost eagerly. I cared about the characters and the worlds they were in. And if I were a developer, those kinds of thoughts could be inspirations for my own projects, be it a fan work of Omori or a unique creation. To bring up my coverage of the Trolls Files X Omori fan games, again, I knew comparatively little about Omori when I played those. And yet, the story and characters were strong and interesting in that fan game because of the influence the original Omori characters and settings brought with them. Yes, it worked off what Omori and Trolls Files started, but from that basis, something new and interesting was made that explored the themes of both games further and believably. And even if nothing new was really made by using Omori as a fan creation, it still inspired someone out there to create, to make their first steps into the world of art and expression. There are creators and other personalities out there that have become famous for doing their own thing, but nearly all of them had to start somewhere, typically from practicing, following, or copying someone else's styles or ideas. In short, Omori is not just a good game worth the praise it gets. It's also one that can easily inspire, not just art, but how we approach things in our lives. If there's any thoughts you have about the game or questions you have about stuff I didn't cover or you're confused about, go ahead and make yourself known in the comments. To be sure, there are a lot of thoughts and ideas I had that I didn't put in this video. I felt that it was getting too long, but I will answer whatever you have questions about or want to discuss. This video was voted on by you, the viewers, as what you wanted me to work on next, and I am infinitely grateful for the patience you've shown in waiting for me to get it done. The next couple videos were already voted on, and they shouldn't take more than a couple weeks, if even that. Leave a like to help me out, subscribe to keep in touch, especially for the voting when that comes around again. But most importantly, take care of yourselves. And as always, please support the official release, even if they suck.